Welcome to Property Chats, Candid News and Views. Today's guest is none other than Romey Chopra, not only my business partner, but also my life partner of 27 years. Yes, obviously we don't look that old. But welcome, Romey.
Lovely to be here, Manny.
So guys, today is all about knowing what makes Romey Chopra tick, what are the good, the bad, and the ugly, as it were. So Romey, firstly, a big welcome once again. And in a sort of nutshell, if I take you back to when you were sort of maybe not doing property as much, what was the thought process you were going through and what made you get into property investing?
So my life before property, as obviously many of you know, I graduated as a pharmacist many moons ago, and I sort of most of my work was very much working in the community. I was working as a community pharmacist. I was working as a locum, traveling around the country. So I was sort of going around different parts, Scotland, Wales, all sorts of places. So I spent many, many miles driving around. And I think one of the things that particular profession taught me was communicating with different people every day, getting to sort of see how different parts of the country, and I think that sort of started the sort of whole thinking process for me, because I think property is all about people, and community pharmacy sort of gave me that sort of foundation of being able to have that dialogue and being able to deal with people's problems, people think, albeit on a medical basis, but it sort of sowed the seeds for me, and I think generally, is one of the, I never really, pharmacy was never going to be my sort of long term.
Wasn't your passion? Let's put it that way.
It wasn't my passion, absolutely. It's one of those things, you fall into it, and you spend 4 or 5 years in university. I spent, and I don't, I don't have a regret. It was never going to be my full time passion. So there was always that hunger to look for something else, and I think I sort of started my journey in property. I think really the sort of first sort of inclination was when I was actually in university, and I bought my first property actually when I was 22, 23, and it was a 4-bedroom detached house in Nottingham, and which I bought for the princely sum of £72,000 back in those days, and I sold it about a year later for about 84, 85. So I thought, well, that's interesting, and I think that's really when my sort of thinking process started, in terms of that property could be an interesting vehicle. I then subsequently moved to London, and I bought my first property. As you know, Manny, was a very modest 2-bedroom, 1.5-bedroom apartment in West London. At that time, we're talking about the 90s, guys, here, where again, it's one of those situations where the property prices absolutely crashed, and I bought that property for I think if my memory serves me correctly, around about £32,000.
You won't get you a shed now.
You won't get a car parking space for that part of the world today. So it's I think those are the seeds of the foundation.
Moments.
Those are the moments that sort of set my thought process, and realizing that property was certainly a vehicle that was a great investment strategy going forward.
And also, I think if I can rejig your memory, if I may, you mentioned that back in the day when your dad was around, you all had a HMO. Tell us about that. That's an interesting story.
So my dad was an engineer by background, and one of the and I, as a youngster, I was born in Southampton, and
like Rishi Sunak.
Right, Rishi. My claim to fame. Now, and as I said, I was about 7, 8 years old, and at that time it was a 8 or 9 bedroom property. Dad stripped it back to brick, and as an electrician, I was going around with him, putting the wires through the staircases and all sorts of things. And again, as a young child, you don't really understand or appreciate, but my dad had that vision at that age, and we're talking 90s, 70s.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And we bought that house. I mean, crazy. The numbers are even more crazy. And I think that price, he paid £8,000 for this, 4,500 4-story property. I mean, it's just insane when you think about it. But again, if I look back, it's one of those situations. Unfortunately, as I said, my father passed away when I was very young. So unfortunately, I never got to sort of appreciate the learnings and the leveraging that I may have got from that. But again, when I look back, I can clearly see that those were all things that have instilled my knowledge and my passion going forward. And you start to, as you go forward and as you start to going on along this journey, you do look back and you start to think about, oh, now that makes sense. Now I understand what you did,
So it's like not just this moment, but it was like these little
yeah,
steps
I think it's a
along
series
the way.
along the way. Absolutely, absolutely. So,
Right. So what would you say so far? Like you've been doing property full time for over what, 12, 15 years now?
yeah, I think full time, about 15 years, and I think my investment journey probably started about 20 years ago. As you know, we sort of started off. So my sort of the buy to let journey, like most property people are. You sort of and again. Along the way, you've made some good decisions, and you've made probably not some bad decisions.
So what would you say are the top sort of 3 highlights of your property career up until now?
I think one of my top ones, I think, is I purchased a care home back in 2006, 2007, very much leveraging on my background as a pharmacist and sort of leveraging my medical knowledge. And it was interesting because when I was working for Boots in Nottingham and sort of southern part of England, I was responsible as a pharmacist for looking after and managing many, many care homes along that south coast. And it was very interesting because I used to go there and I would always try to meet up with the owner. And they said, I'm sorry, he's in the Seychelles for a week, he's in Spain for a week. And I think to myself, crikey, it's not a bad wicket to be. Guy's running a business, half the time he's sitting on the beach and smoking a cigar. I thought, this is interesting. So that again, sort of, again, it was one of those situations where I thought, hang on, here's a property with an operating business, government funded, guaranteed income, and a growing market. So it all started to think, oh, well, hang on, it's those moments when you start to look. I mean, it was a big leap of faith because the property itself was based up in Carlisle, 300 miles away from where I live. And when I sort of mentioned it to a lot of people, they thought, I'd lost my marbles. They think, like a lot of people think, buy on your doorstep, buy close by. I went completely the other way. But there was sort of method to the madness. I think the reason for me I'd seen many care homes before that through agents in and around London. And one of the key things I found there was you wanted to have a business where there was consistency, that longevity. This particular care home had been operating since 1986, so it had already been operating for more than 20 years. And one of the key things that I sort of made me want to go and purchase it was that many of the staff were still there 20 years on, which is incredibly unusual in any business today. Even today, I mean, Christine, who was my manager, when I took over the care home, she was, in her mid-20s, and she stayed with me right through up until about 2-3 years ago. And when she got to the age of 60, she decided to retire, much to my disappointment. But she obviously, of course, I accepted her. But it's that sort of type of passion that when I saw what they did and everything else. So I would say that would be my number one. And then going forward from that, I think our first new build, the Reading project, as you know, Manning. I remember we had many sleepless nights on that particular project because we had lots of challenges along the way, as you know, the 106, the drainage, the list goes on, as you know. But I think the end result was, we produced an absolutely fantastic looking property. I think it's one of the most, I think to date, probably one of the best looking developments that we've done till now.
Sure.
And I think the third one was our first commercial, which was Surbiton. Again, an interesting project where we built something. We had to go through the planning. We were very fortunate to get the planning first time round. And again, I think the end result was fantastic. It was our first building something, creating a shop, and then. Do
you want to give a quick what it was? Tell the audience.
So essentially, it was a shop in Surbiton High Street in Surrey. For those who don't quite know where Surbiton is, it was a shop that had been empty for many years. What was interesting about it was that it had rear access. It had a large piece of land at the back, which was largely unused, more of a fly tip than anything else, to be fair. And we then decided, and taking advantage of looking at sort of being able to take commercial shops, taking some of the space away from it and recreating that space into residential. So, I mean, again, I think when we did the numbers, we realized that actually Surbiton having a very, very high pounds per square foot residential. We did the numbers and clearly we built a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single story masonette at the back. And then we basically took about 20% of the shop space, reduced that. And the interesting thing about that, guys, is that, we very cleverly managed to go under the small business rate scheme, effectively making the shop business rate exempt. Effectively, that sort of gives you a much greater audience in terms of taking possession. And that's worked great. I mean, I think we've made, effectively, after refinancing, we made the shop unencumbered. And effectively, I think our value of that 2-bedroom apartment was in excess of £500,000 on a build cost of less than 140,000. So a great project. So I think those would be my 3 highlights to date. I think I've got a few more in the pipeline. I'm very excited about some of the current developments that we're looking.
And we can talk about that
Sure.
in a few minutes. But so those are great, and I'm really sort of happy that you managed to have these amazing sort of highlights and moments during your career. What would you say now were your biggest challenges or things that didn't go quite well, and what did you learn from those?
I think some of the challenges are I think possibly the development we did in Maidenhead, and again, sort of possibly, we had a situation there where we had a neighbouring property where we had a shared sewage connection, and on hindsight, again, is one of those situations where sort of you fall into a situation, oh, let's just crack on with it. You make a decision to do some piece of works without maybe doing the adequate consultation. Paperwork consultation. That obviously created a bit of a problem. We ended up getting into a litigation situation. And, we managed to get it resolved in the end, but at a significant cost, which effectively affects your bottom line. So it's things like that. And I would always reiterate that when you're doing any project, take advice. At the end of the day, you're good at what you're good at, and basically sub out what which is something that's not in your remit or that's not your strength. I've learned huge amount from that.
I mean, I think you had a few sleepless nights as a result.
Yeah, it was a chat, and it's one of those things. I'm a bit tough on myself. When I make a mistake, I hold my hand up to it. But I'm a problem solver, as you know, Manny. I try to troubleshoot. I don't. But this was something that I took full responsibility for, and in principle, I should have.
That's absolutely fine. Like you said,
this
is why they're learning lessons, right?
Absolutely, you've got to take it on the chin. There are sometimes you make a decision where and sometimes you make an impulsive decision, and you look back and you think, what, okay, but it's a good lesson to learn.
Absolutely.
And
Any others?
I think in terms of purchasing certain properties, I think there are 2 properties I've purchased. I would say outside my geographical area. One of them was up in Doncaster. Again, a new build. Never even saw it. Got sort of bamboozled by the sales guy at the time, and then invariably what happened then was we then bought it, and it's probably been to date probably one of the worst investments I've ever made. Hasn't gone up a halfpenny. Interest rates have gone up and probably going to go to negative.
But at least you've learned that you don't want to invest in those areas, and that's not your strategy.
Absolutely. And then I think we tried to do something with homeless people back in Coventry.
Coventry, yeah.
We bought it. It was like £70,000 for a 4-bedroom property, and you think, wow, fantastic. Only to find actually it was more of a headache and a nightmare. But I think, again, fortunately, again, we managed to sell it and got out of it.
And we came out of it without really any losses.
But, we were fortunate. But again, I think sometimes you think, okay, give it a try. But you say, you know what, clearly I know what I don't want to do now. And that probably makes you more focused on what you really want to do. And sort of you get your geographical space right and you get your strategies right. So that's pretty much how I read it anyway.
That's great. So really, what makes you tick as a person? What makes you get out of bed every morning?
I think the word opportunity. I think that for me, that's the buzz. The opportunity to be able to do something that you love doing, to make a difference. As you know, Manny, I'm very passionate that with all the stuff I do on the care home. To be able to do that, I think for me, as I said, I'm providing a property, I'm helping people, I'm making a positive difference in these people's lives. everything that we do, all the property that we create and the services that we provide is actually making a positive impact in society, making a positive influence to people's lives. And I think, you know, the opportunity and the ability to be able to do that, I think, is what gets me up. Because, you know, every day we sit down and, you know, we look at various things that come across our table. We sort of strategically look at that. You and I loggerheads on most of the time on a lot of these things. But, you know, I think it's great because I think we look at things, we have different views on it. And I think at the end of the day, you know, if the numbers work and everything else works, if it feels right, I'm a gut feel guy. You know, I'm not I'm a numbers guy. I'm a gut feel guy. If it feels right, tastes right, smells right, you know, let's do it. You know, that's my sort of philosophy. Opportunity for me is what, as I said, that, and you know, it's the opportunity to do something which feels right, goes right, and
Make a difference.
and makes a positive difference. Yeah.
I mean, I know a personal passion of yours is about helping, or maybe even just doing informal consultations or helping people through mental health issues and things. And you've been very successful in that.
I think, you know, mental health is an area which is largely, you know, it's an area which is a big problem, and people, it's sort of brushed under the carpet somewhat. You know, all of us suffer from mental illness in some way, shape, or form throughout our lives. You know, and it's one of those topics that people feel somewhat embarrassed to talk about, or feel uncomfortable to talk about. And I think it needs to be brought out in the open, because I think it's causing a immense amount of damage to our society. And I think, you know, whether even young people, I think you know, we've got children at university, and, you know, I've seen, you know, my daughters, you know, a lot of my daughters' friends who go through, you know, just, you know, even breaking up with their boyfriend seems to be like a mass sort of, oh my God, what am I going to do type of situation. I think there's a lot to be said. You know, we're very fortunate to have had the experience of doing what we do and having the ups and downs in life, and being able to deal with them. And I don't think young people are very well equipped to deal with that. You know, as I said.
So is that a future thing for you?
I really would like. I'd like to go out in some sort of forum and be able to provide that platform to say, listen, guys, talk. Just sit there. There's no one's judging you here. No one's making. You know, it's all about, you know, listening. I think that people need a listening ear, and I think too often the social media, the platforms, it's, in a lot of people, it's too judgmental. The trolling that happens, the bullying that happens, all these things that happen, the peer pressure that people are under, even within the property circle. You know, we run an event every month, and many people in there, you know, and I think the wonderful thing is that we are providing a platform for people to come in. And I think one of the things I think we've been, you know, you've been very incredibly successful on, is providing an atmosphere and a platform for people to come in and feel comfortable about talking. And as I always said to a lot of people, we had the meeting yesterday. I said, don't ever worry about however stupid you think that question is, however irrelevant you think that question is. Trust me, there's 5 other people in that room that want to ask that same question, and you're doing them a great service by asking that question. I think, and we need to promote that more and more, I think, going forward.
So what would need to happen in your property business that would allow you to pursue your passion, like, you know, helping young people with mental health?
Okay, so I think one, as you know, is me. I have to learn the art of delegation. You know, the difficulty for any person, whatever entrepreneur you are, and if as a property entrepreneur or otherwise, when you're starting a business, you tend to have all the hats on. You know, you're the developer, you're the accountant, you're this, that, and the other. And I think that's something that I'm learning, and having to. And I think, you know, you've been instrumental in helping me do that. I think the difficulty is letting go. It's hard, because you build something up and you have this sort of anxiety about giving it to somebody else. What happens if they do it wrong? And I think I've got to slowly allow that person. I think
trusting is
trusting. Yeah, you know, it's one of those things. But I'm getting better at it.
So, future then, what are your plans 2023 and beyond, maybe the next sort of 3 to 5 years? Do you have like a vision in your business that you want to achieve?
I think our focus now has been primarily on commercial to residential conversions, and looking to operate. I want to start doing more operating trading businesses. I think when we're looking to create these commercial premises, I'm seeing about how we can actually utilize our own operational things in there. I think that's quite a smart move. So you've got you build the residential units, you do what we do anyway. And I think the great thing about local, I mean, the areas that we're looking at, these are highly desirable areas. I think more and more people are now looking at more inner town living. I think that's becoming quite popular now. People don't necessarily want to have to drive. Everything's there on their doorstep. They come out, the Costa's there, the Greg's is there.
So you mean living on sort of high street?
I think
high
so.
Street living?
I mean, the recent acquisition that I just bought a bank recently in Henley, and we're looking to convert that into residential apartments. I mean, Henley's a beautiful part of the country, beautiful town centre. As you know, you've got the river on your doorstep. You've got some beautiful pubs, restaurants, in a highly desirable area to live. You don't really require cars. I think that I'm thinking about maybe creating a situation to have electric bikes or electric scooters there. All sorts of things like that. I think
environment, sustainability, all of that comes in.
Absolutely. Well, I think that it's inevitable. I think everything we do now I think climate and environment is now a big topic. As a developer, we're having to embrace that. We're having to, to everything we do now has to encompass all that. But I think I think the new generation, I mean, take our own children, for example, now, the environment for them is a big thing. And I think we have to start to embrace that. And everything that we do for tomorrow's generation or our customers of tomorrow will ask that, will require that. And I think it's our duty.
The councils are going that way as well.
Absolutely.
Asking for 20%, 30% carbon emission reductions on developments.
And those are challenges. I mean, material cost is going up, labor cost is going up. As a developer, we're entering into an area which we've never been in before. So much change, so much regulation. Many challenges, difficulty in finding labor, increasing material cost, trying to align sellers' expectations, because again, you've got to balance the numbers, otherwise so it's getting all that right. And I think that's the beauty about being in the environment that we are, being around people who are like-minded, the networking, the property meets, Titans, and everything that you do. I think is warmly welcome, because education is the key here. And the thing is, because it's constantly changing, you've got to have your finger on the pulse. You've got to read those publications, see what everybody else is doing. And there's some very smart people out there doing some really interesting things. And there's some golden nuggets you're going to pick along the way. And you've got to embrace them and see how they fit within your business and how they fit within your strategic focus going forward. And I think that's been, tantamount to a lot of the success that I've had, is watching, learning, implementing, learning from your mistakes, and moving forward.
Great. So commercial to residential conversions, primarily on the high street.
Absolutely. And I think, as you know, I'm also very keen to do more in the healthcare arena. I do have a passion for that. I think that's, the NHS is going through some really challenging times at the moment. I think we've got an aging population. We've got the healthcare service under a huge amount of strain. I think as property people, if you look about it, Manny, property is the instrument in delivering, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education. We go from one building to another building to another. Our whole life, we're in the box business, and that's what we do. So it's all about knowing about how to use that box in terms of, a box may have a certain use one day. I think the beauty about things like Class C is the government made a great decision by doing that, because certain boxes, the functionality of that box doesn't work for that, but it could work better for that, and you just break it up or tweak it. It's great. It's a bit like playing Lego. I used to love playing Lego as a child. So it's all about remolding, break it up and do it again. And I think that's what it's all about in a very simplistic way.
Great. So coming up to the end of this episode, what would you say is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
I think for me, the legacy would be to be able to have operations like delivering services in my properties, which will still be there long after I've gone, and to have that. I think the key legacy would be that Romey was here, he created this, and he's constantly making a positive difference in people's lives. I think that would be my key mantra, that the guy came here, he did some stuff, and it's made a positive impact on many people's lives. And the more I do, the more people's lives I make an impact in a positive way. I think that would be my sort of legacy that I'd like to leave when the man upstairs asked me to come.
So, so really, is there anything else that you want to say? That anything that I haven't asked, you may want to mention something.
No, I would say that for anybody who's embarking, going into property for the first time, and even people who've been in the journey, I think it's life's a roller coaster. I think 2023 is going to be a very, very interesting year. Don't worry about, like I said, people worry about interest rates. People worry about. I would say
Inflation.
focus on what you don't focus on what you can't control. Focus on what you can control, and stick to those, and do what you do best. Surround yourself with brilliant people. Get yourself to networking events. Speak to people like Manny. Go to the Titans events. This is where you're going to learn, pick up golden nuggets. This is the fuel that's going to this is the diesel that's going to fuel your business moving forward. And that would be my lasting message to you.
I haven't paid him for that, by the way, guys. But thanks for coming, giving up your time today. I
My
know
pleasure.
you're a super busy guy.
No.
And good luck with all your projects. I know you're having a few challenging moments in the last few weeks.
We'll get there.
We'll ride the wave.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.